What's the difference between martial arts and self-defense? We're going to talk about that in this video. Okay, martial art. Martial art is just what it is, a military combative art. If you're training in martial arts, you are learning basic techniques, you're learning forms, you're learning possibly one-step sparring, you're doing sparring if you spar. But those are the martial arts, you're repeatedly doing those things over and over. They do have a self-defense aspect. However, when you're training in a martial arts school, most of the time your sparring does not truly mimic self-defense. It's more mimicking sport. Even MMA. MMA is great, but there are still rules that they follow in their competitions. On the street, there are no rules. So self-defense is a lot different when you take out the rules. Even MMA in its early days only had like 2 rules. Don't bite and don't hit to the groin. Everything else was good to go. There were no weight classes. That was more aligned with self-defense, where it pitted actual martial art against martial art. Nowadays, there's way more rules. There's rounds, there's weight classes, and it's really changed the sport from what it was a long time ago in its roots. Same thing here. When you're training a martial art and you're training your techniques, you're training your forms, that's way different than when you're training self-defense. If you're training strictly self-defense and you're strictly training combatives, you must first know yourself and know what you're willing to do to somebody to stop a fight on the street, stop an attack. UFC 248 just happened not too long ago. And the one big benefit of MMA is that it has really opened people's eyes to how much punishment a human body can take. Yes, there's the one-punch knockouts and stuff like that. They do occur. I'm not arguing that. But in this past UFC 248, where it was Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Zhang, the women's strawweight champion, that fight from the beginning to the very end, those 2 women beat the living crap out of each other nonstop for 5 straight rounds. And stood standing and did an interview in the ring after the fight, totally coherent. You cannot just, and they were getting hit with bombs. You cannot sit there and trade. The body they were able to wail on each other and absorb that punishment for 5 rounds. But then in the other fight, the other main event between the 2 big guys, they're fighting, going at it, trading blows, although not many because that fight wasn't very good. But even other fights, guys are slugging it out. All of a sudden, there's an accidental eye poke, and the fight stops like that. They could be wailing on each other. All of a sudden, one guy catches an accidental finger in the eye, and he stops dead, puts his hand over his eye, and walks away. Why is that? Because the body can absorb a lot of punishment. It cannot absorb damage. So when you're doing self-defense, I can sit here and I can punch a guy and he might be able to take it. There are fighters that even went through a whole entire fight with a broken hand, broken jaw, and yes, that's damage. But as soon as you attack the eyes, or you attack the throat, or you make a joint go the opposite way it's supposed to bend, fights stop instantly. That's what you've got to be willing to do, and that's what you have to train for if you're training for self-defense. So, and it happens a lot, and I'm guilty of it myself, training traditional martial arts, and you're sparring, and you're doing your one-step sparring, and you're going through your defenses where if Bob had arms and could move, he throws a punch, and I'm blocking, punching, and punching. In your mind, you're thinking, that, okay, this guy's going to throw a punch, I'm going to block, and I'm going to punch him 3 times, and he's going to be knocked out on the ground. It doesn't work that way. But people that train in traditional martial arts, if that's as far as they go, is in their self-defense training, they're fooling themselves, and they're giving themselves a false impression, a false confidence of what their skill level really is. Because as soon as something happens and they're able to punch somebody 3 times and that person is still standing there and swinging back, all of a sudden their mind freezes, their confidence goes down, and they're in big trouble. I've also talked to people that like compete in Taekwondo matches, and were in a bar when all hell broke loose, and they flat out admitted they froze. They panicked, they froze, and they hid because they had no idea what to do. But that's because you fight like you train. If your training only consists of one-step sparring and in-class sparring or sport competition, you're not training for self-defense. It's different when you have rules. It's different like Taekwondo. You can kick anywhere. You can't punch to the head. So when it comes time to actually use those techniques, you're not going to want to punch to the head. You're going to forget about it. You're also going to forget about protecting your head because, you know, you fight with your hands down here all the time. Is there a difference between martial arts and self-defense? There is today, but there shouldn't be. Because as the martial arts have progressed, they've gotten not watered down, I guess you could say watered down, but from the time they left Okinawa and went to mainland Japan, that was the beginning of the change. Okinawa, they still train for self-defense. They still attack eyes. They still attack joints. They still attack vital areas of the body. Once it went to Japan to be put in schools and to train people for the military, it was simplified to teach massive groups of people. That's where all the lines came in. Line drills, walking up and down the floor. The katas were simplified and broken down into smaller chunks. Everything was simplified. Then when you take that and you pass that along, some teachers that knew the original intent would pass those secrets along, but many of them, as it went, got lost. And then we were left with the simplified version. If you go on YouTube and find any video of Okinawan karate masters from Okinawa, you're going to see a big difference in the way they train compared to like Shotokan dojos or anything that traditionally was from the Japanese mainland. So is martial arts and self-defense the same? They should be. One should be part of the other. Your main reason for martial arts, at least one aspect of it, should be effective self-defense, should be attacking the eyes, should be dealing with things happening here. This is where things happen. Not like in a ring where a guy's 4 feet away, you know, throwing jabs at the air and stuff. He's not even close enough to hit you. This is where stuff happens. This is where you got to deal with. And if that's in your training, great. Then you're training for both self-defense and martial arts. Or you can train martial arts for health, but still have this self-defense aspect that you train periodically to keep your skills up. But don't leave it out. That's my belief. Yes, they are the same. Self-defense should be the main focus of martial arts. It should always be in your training, and you should be well aware what you're willing to do to a person if the need arises. What are you willing to do? Are you going to be willing to jab and take out an eye? Are you going to be able to gouge their eyes out, clap their ears and possibly deafen them for life, strike them in the throat and possibly they could die? Any one of these, if they hit their head, fall and crack their head off the pavement because they don't know how to fall, a person could die. Are you willing to do those things to save your own life? That's got to be part of your training. Then the rest of the time, you're doing your forms, you're working on technique, making sure your techniques are effective, fast, strong, those things. It's got to be part of your training. But please don't leave it out, because if you leave it out, if you're going to leave it out and you're not going to train these things, be sure that you keep in mind that you're not training for effectiveness. Don't expect just training your punches, walking up and down the floor, doing your basics or doing your forms with that, not even with self-defense, not even in mind. If you're just training for health and stuff, don't expect it to work if the time arises, because chances are it won't. So that's my take on it. Let me know what you think. Put it in the comments below. Do you train for self-defense? Are you willing to do these things? Do you train for these things? Even if you train solo. That's why I went from a punching bag to a bob. Most of my training, all of my training right now is solo. That's why I went to a bob, because I train these things. I still want to have it in my mind, striking the human form. That's why I went to a bob instead of a round cylindrical punching bag. So let me know, do you train for these? Or do you train for health? If you do train for health and you're not training for self-defense, what's the reason? Is it because you're older? Because, you know, you've got health issues, or I don't know. So put it in the comments below. Let me know. If you enjoyed this video, you found it helpful, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification button so that you're notified every time new videos come out. Until next week, train hard, stay focused, and don't ever quit. God bless, and we'll see you next week.